This movie has two stories running in parallel, so you're actually getting two for the price of one. The first one is all about sharpening Canadian saws. Now, if you're watching this movie, you've probably been watching some of our other movies about how we make our hardwood decking. You've also probably seen my movies on tuning PLC computer systems in our saw rigs. Now, by fine-tuning the computer sizing systems, we can get them within a millimetre. By fine-tuning the saws themselves, we can get them to millimetre accuracy also. And when you get the whole shooting match working well and dialed in, then you can cut good straight timber. Now, you're probably about to build a hardwood deck yourself. Well, having the right tools is important when you start those projects. Having them sharp and working well is the difference between the job being a success or not. It's the same for us here. Everything we use here must be razor sharp. You're about to see how much time we spend on sharpening our tools. All day, every day, we have machines running, sharpening something, which means we're constantly changing saws, blades, chainsaw chains and knives. We have people here on site at 6 a.m. and they're still here at 6 p.m. every day of the year, non-stop. Now, some of the sharpening machines are fairly new, some are fully automatic, and some are as old as the ark itself. As I've said many times before, training is a big deal here, and it needs to be because a lot of what we do is not taught anywhere. It's time consuming and it's costly. It's only available by being handed down from the experts like John Gorton, which is a pity because we're running out of good people like John because we've allowed our industries to go offshore to China. As we stop producing in this country, we soon forget our trades and we lose the good people very quickly. Now, I said the movie had two parts to it. The second part is showcasing John Gorton's talents. He told me today that he's been coming here since 1970. Now, that's about 50 years. John is what you call a saw doctor. He's somewhere between a metallurgist and a magician. Leaning more towards the magician, I'd say. Now, John brings to the table something very unique that you don't see much nowadays, and that is a willingness to teach and the ability to be able to explain why the saws may not be performing as they should. He can explain what the steel is doing and why it's acting in the manner that it is. So understanding what this wild animal is doing is a real challenge. It's a privilege to be able to work alongside someone like John. I've been listening to him for most of my life, and every day he comes on site, I learn something new. So as you can see, there's a lot to know about keeping your tools sharp. Now, John's looking for the high spots and the low spots by the light coming through under his straight edge. This is what's known as saw hammering. He's tensioning the saw so that when the saw spins up at high speed, the saw blade will stand up straight. By hammering the saw, he's actually stretching it in places. When the saw is idle, it's wobbly. When it spins up to its correct speed, it stands up straight and stiff. This is the trick to cutting straight and true hardwood. As you can see, there's a bit of an art to this game. Now, John could spend at least 30 to 40 minutes or more on each side of this saw, sometimes longer if we've damaged it, just to get it perfect. Now, if the log moves while it's being cut, or there's not enough water on the saw to keep it cool, it could throw the saw out and it will have to be re-tensioned again. Now, we have a number of these saws in our rack. In total, we probably carry about 50 saws of varying sizes. Every saw is numbered and we keep a detailed diary on their individual performance. Saws, believe it or not, can be a bit individual, and some of them for some reason require more attention than others. Therefore, we keep a close watch on their performance. If we have bad luck while using the saw rig, sometimes we might have to change this particular saw out twice in the one day. In any case, these large saws may well get changed out daily if they're being worked hard. Now rather than cut the footage out, I've sped it up by 4 times so you can see what's involved in getting this saw just right. It gives you a bit of an idea of how finicky it can be just trying to get this saw spot on. If I had nothing to do, I'd watch him all day. In saying that, I've spent a lot of my time watching it and I don't think I can do it. It's definitely an art form and only a few people have the golden touch, and John's definitely got it.
I'm too old for this, been around this, broken down for way too long. Left my home for this, starry-eyed, it's no surprise, things went wrong. What was I thinking, babe? All the mistakes I made, I should've never left your side. When you were there for me, you said my world is free. Now I got to change my mind. I'm coming home. Broken down for way too long. Left my home for this, starry-eyed, it's no surprise, things went wrong. What was I thinking, babe? All the mistakes I made, I should've never left your side. When you were there for me, you said my world was free. Now I got to change my mind.
So that the saw has clearance when it cuts, we do what's known as setting the saw. Now you can see here that I'm setting this saw using a dial gauge. I'm putting a bit of a twist on the tip and I'm effectively bending it out a little. One tip goes out to the left and the next tip goes out to the right. Now the set, as it's known, will give the curve slightly wider than the saw blade itself, so that when the timber passing through the spinning saw, only the tip of the saw is touching and the blade itself can pass through without touching the timber. That gives the saw blade some clearance.
I'm too old for this, been around this, broken down for way too long. Left my home for this, starry-eyed, it's no surprise, things went wrong. What was I thinking, babe?
This machine is a Goldsmith automatic circular saw sharpener. Now the guy who designed this must have been a bit of a smart cookie, because it's a bit like a Swiss watch when you look at the back of it. It has a heap of chains and sprockets in there going around at different speeds and timing the saw so that the grinding head changes from side to side. It's a great machine for our large Canadian and smaller bench saws. Now when you put a big saw on like this one, it probably takes about an hour or so to do it properly. The trick is to grind it steady and then allow it to polish the tip for a few runs towards the end. Now John is seen here giving us a few pointers on how to get a better finish on our saws. And Once again, with most of this equipment you're looking at here, there's no YouTube movies on how it works. While we were waiting for the Canadian saw to do a few laps on the Goldsmith, I suggested that the guy set up the old grinder to sharpen a few Docker saws. In this case, it looks like that all you need is an expert, a piece of chalk behind your ear, a straight edge and a shifting spanner. Now thankfully this old grinder is not PLC computerised. Now the Docker saws are those saws that you tend to forget about. And this old grinder is as old as Methuselah. Now that's not entirely correct, because Methuselah is the name of the character from the Old Testament of the Bible. He was the grandfather of Noah. Methuselah is said to have died at the age of 969, making him the longest lived figure in the Bible. So to be fair, our grinder isn't quite that old. Now I decided a while back that not only should the Docker saws be sharpened on site, but the saws needed to be swapped out a lot more regularly. It was part of my push to have our own staff learn the trades and start doing more of this sort of stuff back in-house. Now just look at the shine coming up on those tungsten tips. Now like many others, we went through that stage where it was all the rage to get someone else to do everything for you. Then we found we couldn't get anyone to do half the stuff, so we're back to doing it ourselves again. Now I'd say by next week, this old grinder will probably have a steam clean and then she'll look brand new again. Well, as new as a 65-year-old grinder can look anyway. It's good to see the old gear brought back out of retirement and earning its keep once again.